The most important rule was the first one: never let him see you. For 365 days, I followed it. I was a ghost in a $12 million penthouse, a scent of ginger and garlic, a perfect plate left in a silent kitchen. My employer was a ghost too, a roomer in a black suit, the head of a soul crime syndicate who only ever ate alone. Then I quit, and the moment he finally saw my face, his entire empire shifted on its axis. Her name was Ilara Vance, a culinary prodigy who traded Michelin-starred kitchens for a single secret assignment: to become a ghost. My employer was Min Jun, a reclusive kingpin whose empire was built on silence. For 1 year, our entire relationship was a dialogue of taste and scent. He fell in love with my cooking without ever knowing my face. But why would a powerful man forbid the sight of his own chef? And what did I discover in his kitchen that made walking away the most dangerous recipe of all? The offer came through a blind channel: $200,000 a year for a single client, a non-negotiable contract, a one-page NDA thicker than any I'd seen in a Michelin kitchen. My agent said the word discretion 5 times in 2 minutes. I was 28, buried in debt from a failed restaurant of my own, and the money was a lifeline. I asked for a name. I was given a code name, the Sparrow. I asked for a face. I was given a rule. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a silent tower in Gangnam. My domain was a professional kitchen worthy of a flagship restaurant, but my world was a 5-meter square. I was to arrive at 4 a.m. through a private garage elevator that opened directly into the kitchen. The house manager, a man named Kang who spoke like he was measuring each word for weight, laid out the protocol. Meals were to be left on the heated service ledge in the butler's pantry. I was to be gone by the time he entered for his first coffee at 6:15. If I heard footsteps, I was to freeze. If I needed to cough, I was to step into the soundproofed cold storage. My existence was to be a rumor confirmed only by the evidence on a plate. For the first month, I learned him through his leftovers. He was Korean, but his palate was globally orphaned. He left the japchae untouched but finished every speck of a French daube. He had a visceral reaction to cilantro. A single leaf would see the entire dish returned uneaten. He loved the crunch of perfectly fried panko, the shock of fresh yuzu, the comfort of a slow-cooked jjigae on rainy evenings. I began to map his moods through food. A picked-at plate meant stress. A clean bowl, contemplative silence. The day a rival faction made headlines for a bust in Incheon, he ate 2 full servings of my tteokbokki, the spicy comfort food, something he usually avoided. The silence was the hardest part. I was used to the roaring symphony of a restaurant line. Here, the only sounds were my knives, the simmer of pots, and the distant, muffled hum of soul far below. I started leaving notes, not words that would violate the contract, but clues. A single, perfect persimmon beside his morning porridge when the autumn light was particularly beautiful. A specific brand of sea salt I'd sourced from Jeju, placed neatly by the stove, an invitation. He began to respond in kind. A rare, out-of-print French cookbook from the 1960s appeared on my counter. A specific ingredient I'd struggled to find would be waiting the next morning. We were building a language, sentence by sentence, in a conversation where we never met. Kang was the gatekeeper, mid-40s, impeccably dressed, eyes that missed nothing. He was the one who handed me the monthly cash envelope, who relayed the single weekly instruction: less ginger on Thursday, or he requests the lemon tart again. He was my only tether to the man I fed. One morning, after I'd prepared a particularly vulnerable dish, my mother's recipe for okra soup, a Congolese comfort food I'd never served in a professional setting, Kang lingered. He watched me wipe down the spotless counter for a full minute. Then he said quietly, "He has not requested a change in 3 weeks. This is unprecedented." He left before I could ask what that meant. The money cleared my debts. It built a safety net. But I was becoming a phantom in my own life. I dated no one. I told friends I was doing high-end catering. The isolation was a different kind of debt, compounding daily. My only human interaction was with Kang and with Mrs. Park, the ancient, silent woman who came to clean the kitchen after I left. I started to crave the sound of my employer's footsteps, the clink of his cutlery from the distant dining room. I was falling in love with a set of eating habits, a ghost who appreciated my mother's soup. Then 7 months in, the first fracture. It was a brutal February night. I'd made a hearty galbi jajim, the braised short ribs falling from the bone. I placed it on the ledge and turned to leave, but a sound stopped me, not from the dining room, but from the direction of his private study. A glass breaking, a low, guttural curse of pain, then silence. The protocol screamed at me to leave, but the human in me, the one who had been feeding this man for over half a year, froze. The silence that followed was worse than the crash. It was the silence of someone alone and hurt. I did the forbidden thing. I took a fresh towel, ran it under cold water, and placed it on a small tray with a glass of water and the first aid kit I'd found under the sink. I pushed the tray through the service ledge, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't step into the hallway. I just placed it there, a silent offering, and retreated to the kitchen. I stood in the dark, listening. 5 minutes later, I heard the soft shuffle of footsteps. The tray was taken, not a word. 20 minutes after that, the empty tray was pushed back into the kitchen. On it, the towel was folded neatly. Beneath it was a single 100,001 note, not as payment, as a token, a thank you. It was the first direct acknowledgement of my presence. It was also the moment the professional wall cracked. Spring turned to summer. Our silent dialogue intensified. He left me a knife from a master bladesmith in Sarkai. I used it to prepare a stunning sashimi platter. He left a bottle of a legendary Burgundy. I paired it with a simple, perfect steak. The food became more personal, more evocative. I cooked memories I hadn't accessed in years. He ate them with a focus that felt like reverence. Kang's weekly instructions stopped altogether. Min Jun, I had learned his real name from a Financial Times left on a counter, was trusting me completely. The turning point was a Tuesday. I had made a dish of abalone porridge, delicate and nourishing. As I went to place it on the ledge, I saw he had already left something for me, not a book or an ingredient. It was a small, framed photograph placed face down. My hands trembled as I turned it over. It was a picture of a young boy, maybe 8, standing in the kitchen of a small, traditional hanok, helping an elderly woman roll gimbap. The boy's smile was bright, unguarded. The woman's eyes crinkled with joy. On the back, in elegant Hangul, 2 words were written, "My grandmother, before." He had given me a piece of his soul, and in that moment, the rule, the foundational law of my employment, shattered. I didn't just want to feed him. I needed to see the man who had carried this boy inside him all these years. The ghost needed a face. So the next morning, I didn't leave. I turned off all the kitchen lights, stood in the shadow of the pantry doorway, and waited for the sound of his 6:15 footsteps. I was going to break the contract. I was going to look. But as the elevator dinged softly from the private foyer and the footsteps approached, they weren't alone. A second, sharper set of heels clicked alongside them. A woman's voice, cold and clear, cut through the silent dawn. "This sentimentality is a weakness, Min Jun. The Choi family does not tolerate loose ends. The chef is a loose end." And Kang's voice, tense, replied, "She knows nothing, Miss Choi. She is only a cook." The footsteps stopped right outside my kitchen door. I held my breath. Min Jun's voice, when it came, was so low I felt it more than heard it. "She is not only asterisk anything." Then he said the words that turned my blood to ice. "The arrangement stands, but after the merger with the Chois is finalized next week, the chef will be dealt with permanently." The word permanently hung in the air of the dark kitchen long after their footsteps faded. My body was stone. My mind was a siren, dealt with, in the vocabulary of men like Min Jun, that had one meaning. The cold shock crystallized into a single, sharp thought. I had 1 week before the merger. 1 week before I became a loose end to be trimmed. I moved on autopilot, cleaning surfaces that were already spotless. The fear was a live wire, but beneath it, a hotter, more dangerous emotion ignited, a sense of profound betrayal. The framed photo of the boy and his grandmother sat on my counter, a cruel joke. He had shared a memory of innocence while planning my erasure. I picked it up, my fingers trembling not with fear now, but with a furious grief. I didn't put it in my bag. I placed it back exactly where he'd left it. This was no longer a dialogue. It was a war fought with porcelain and steel. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of hyper-focused reconnaissance. My kitchen was my prison, but it was also my intelligence hub. I noted every sound. The house was preparing for something: extra security sweeps, muted conversations in the hall about logistics and asset consolidation. The woman's voice, Miss Choi, became a frequent, icy presence. She was the architect of the merger, and she viewed Min Jun's world, including his invisible chef, as inefficient sentiment. On the 3rd day, I made my move. It was a gamble that relied on everything I'd learned about him in a year. I prepared his dinner, a deceptively simple dish of grilled mackerel with a radical accompaniment, *mombe*, a rich peanut-based stew from my Congolese childhood. It was the food of my family, of my most private self. On the side, I placed not a persimmon or salt, but a single sharp chef's knife, the one he'd given me, polished to a mirror finish. The message was not in the food, but in the pairing. I was showing him the core of who I was, while reflecting his own gift back at him. It was an act of defiance and a question: is this the soul you wish to delete? I didn't wait for a response. I left. That night, for the first time, I didn't sleep. I researched the Choi family. Their empire was older, more entrenched in traditional smuggling and extortion. Minjun's operation was newer, sleeker, focused on digital finance and white-collar fraud. The merger was a hostile takeover dressed as an alliance. Miss Choi was the spearhead, and I, the chef, was apparently a symbol of Minjun's unprofessional attachments. The next morning, the kitchen held its breath. The tray from the night before was on the ledge. The plate was clean. Not a speck of *mombe remained. The knife was gone. In its place was a small, folded square of rice paper. I unfolded it with cold fingers. It was not a note. It was a hand-drawn map. A simple, elegant sketch of the penthouse floor plan. One room, his private study, was marked with a small X. The path from the kitchen was drawn with a dotted line, indicating service corridors. No words, just an invitation or a trap. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the pivot. He had seen my message. He was responding not with words, but with a monumental breach of his own security protocol. He was showing me the way to him. But why? To apologize? To explain? Or to deal with the loose end himself, away from Kang and the ever-watching Miss Choi? I had 4 days until the merger. I decided I would go the following night. But the house, it seemed, had other plans. That afternoon, as I was preparing a broth, Kang entered the kitchen. He never did this during my hours. His face was a mask of strained neutrality. "A request," he said, his voice clipped. "Tonight's meal, you will prepare *Sayeonjang*, the fermented soybean paste stew. He has a guest for dinner. It must be perfect." He placed a heavy, antique ceramic bowl on the counter, a family heirloom, unmistakably. "Serve it in this." The request was a cannonball through my fragile plan. Sayeonjang was not just any dish. It was the ultimate comfort food, profound in its simplicity, often called a mother's taste. To serve it to a guest, in an heirloom bowl, was a statement of deep, almost familial intimacy. Who was this guest? Not Miss Choi. This was a dish of welcome, not corporate negotiation. I prepared the stew with a roiling mind. The process was meditative, the slow fermentation of the paste filling the kitchen with a deep, savory scent that spoke of time and care. As it simmered, I heard them arrive. 2 sets of footsteps. Minjun's measured, and another lighter, older, a shuffling gait. Then a voice that stopped my heart. A frail, elderly woman's voice, speaking in the thick dialect of the Jeolla countryside. "Ego Minjana, this building is too tall, my ears are popping." His grandmother, the woman from the photograph, she was the guest. The pieces slammed together with dizzying force. The merger wasn't just business, it was a hostage situation. The Choi family wasn't just absorbing his assets, they were demanding a symbolic cleansing. His grandmother represented his past, his humanity, the boy in the photo. Miss Choi had likely threatened that gentle old woman's safety to secure his compliance. And my existence, as a person he had connected with on a human level, was a testament to that remaining humanity. To prove his ruthlessness to the Chois, he had to eliminate the proof that he still had a heart. He had to eliminate me. The realization was a sucker punch. He wasn't a monster. He was a man in a cage, forced to choose between his soul and the safety of the only person who ever loved him unconditionally. The dealt-with order wasn't born of coldness, but of desperate, twisted protection. I plated the *Sayeonjang* in the beautiful, heavy bowl. My hands were steady now, my purpose clarified into a single, sharp point. I could not run. Running would make me a loose end the Chois would hunt. I could not stay and be erased. There was only one path forward. I had to become more than a loose end. I had to become a problem so significant, so visible, that eliminating me would break the merger itself. I carried the bowl to the dining room ledge. The doors were slightly ajar. I risked a glance. Minjun was helping his grandmother into a chair, his back to me. His posture, always so controlled, was softened, his shoulders curved with a tenderness I'd never witnessed. She patted his hand, her eyes clouded with age but bright with affection. Then her gaze drifted past him, past the door, and met mine. Time stopped. Her eyes, milky with cataracts, held mine for a fraction of a second. There was no shock, no alarm, just a slow, deliberate blink and the faintest, almost imperceptible nod. She had seen the ghost, and she acknowledged it. I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. Her nod wasn't fear, it was a signal, an alliance. She knew what her presence here meant, what pressure her grandson was under, and in that silent exchange, she had just deputized me. An hour later, Kang returned for the tray. The heirloom bowl was empty. Beneath it, tucked against the cloth, was a new note. This one had words in Minjun's precise hand. It read, "The taste was correct, thank you." But below that, almost as an afterthought, was a string of 10 digits, a phone number. It was a lifeline and a weapon. He was giving me a direct line. He was breaking protocol on a catastrophic level. This was no longer an invitation to his study. This was an act of mutiny. He was trusting me with the power to contact him, to disrupt the carefully monitored channels controlled by Kang and by extension, the Choi's. I memorized the number and flushed the note down the disposal. That night, from a payphone 3 districts away, I sent a single text to that number. It contained no greeting, no name, just the address of a small, anonymous *Pojangmarcher*, a street tent bar in a nondescript neighborhood, and a time, 2 a.m. tomorrow. I was no longer the invisible chef. I was a conspirator, and I was walking into the belly of the beast with a single, dangerous hope, that the man who fell in love with my cooking was willing to betray his own empire to save the woman who made it. The Pojangmarcher was a bubble of steam and light in the sleeping city. I sat in the corner, 2 untouched cups of soju on the plastic table, my nerves wound tight enough to snap. At 2:03 a.m., the vinyl flap of the tent parted. He didn't look like a kingpin. In a simple black sweater and jeans, his hair slightly disheveled by the wind, Minjun looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. He slid onto the bench opposite me, his eyes scanning my face for the first time. There was no surprise in them, only a deep, weary recognition. He had known, somehow, what I would look like. We sat in silence for a full minute, the Ajama frying tteokbokki behind us the only sound. "You got my text," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "I have not used that phone in 2 years," he replied, his voice low and gravelly. "It is a ghost line. Even Kang does not know it exists." He picked up the soju glass, but didn't drink. The stew was perfect. My grandmother said it tasted exactly like her mother. She asked who the kind ghost in the kitchen was. The mention of his grandmother broke the dam. "They're using her, the Choi's. That's the real merger, isn't it? Her safety for your compliance." A muscle ticked in his jaw. He gave a single sharp nod. "My father made mistakes. He borrowed from the wrong people. The debt was called in not with money, but with a marriage proposal. To Sujai Choi, I refused. My refusal was seen as an insult. My grandmother's small house in Mokpo, it became a target. A fire, a gas leak. She survived. The message was received." The cold, clinical way he said it made my skin crawl, and I'm part of the proof of compliance, eliminating the sentiment. "You were never just sentiment, Ilara." He said my name, my real name, and it felt like a key turning in a lock. "You were a flaw in my armor. The Choi's have drones that monitor thermal signatures in my penthouse. They know a person is in the kitchen for hours each morning. They demanded to know who. I told them you were a piece of software, an automated culinary system from Switzerland. The food was pre-prepared, merely plated by a machine. They demanded a demonstration. I had to hire an actor to pretend to be a technician, servicing the unit. Your existence became a lie I had to keep feeding, and lies are a currency that runs out." The absurdity of it, a Swiss kitchen robot, almost made me laugh, but the implication was deadly. So when the merger finalizes and they come to inventory your assets, they'll discover the machine is a woman, and the lie becomes treason. "Yes," he said, his eyes holding mine. "And a treasonous asset is destroyed, not relocated, destroyed." I took a shaky breath. "So we run, tonight, we get your grandmother and we disappear." He shook his head, a slow, defeated motion. "There is no we, Ilara. You can run, you should run. I have transferred $500,000 to an account for you. The details are on a card in your left coat pocket. My hand flew to my pocket. I felt the stiff edge of a bank card. He had planned for this. He had been planning my escape, not my execution. The betrayal I'd felt curdled into a confusing, painful shame. You were trying to save me. I am trying, he corrected, his voice fierce now. But it is not enough. They are watching the airports, the trains, the ports. They have people in the Immigration Bureau. Kang reports to Sujai Choi directly. He has since the day she first visited. The moment you try to leave, they will know. The money is for hiding, not for fleeing. The walls of the trap closed in. I was a mouse in a maze with no exit. Then what? We wait for them to come. Minjun leaned forward, his elbows on the sticky plastic table. There is one other option, but it is not running, it is burning the maze down. He laid out the plan with the precision of a general. The merger ceremony was in 48 hours. It would take place at the Choi family's private museum. All the principals would be there, Minjun, Sujai Choi, her father, the board elders. It was a symbolic event, followed by a lavish dinner. They have requested, Minjun said, a grim smile touching his lips, that the celebrated automated culinary system cater the event, to demonstrate the efficiency of our merged operations. My blood ran cold. They want me to cook for them. They want the machine to cook for them. They want to see the lie made flesh so they can own it. It is a power play. They eat the food of the ghost, and the ghost is now theirs. And what's your play? I asked. You will not be a ghost that night, he said. You will be a spotlight. You will cook the meal of your life, and during the main course, you will walk into that dining room in front of everyone, and you will serve Sujai Choi yourself. The audacity of it stole my breath, to break the rule of invisibility in the most violent, public way possible, to show the entire Choi organization that Minjun's machine was a woman with a face, a soul, a story. It would humiliate Sujai, who had demanded my erasure. It would expose the lie, but in a way that made Minjun the victim of his own subordinate's insubordination, a manageable scandal, and it would make me, instantly, too visible to simply disappear. A public figure in their own world. I become a problem they can't solve with a bullet, I whispered. You become a witness they cannot erase, he corrected, and in the chaos of that exposure, my men will extract my grandmother from her secure location. It is the only moment their attention will be entirely diverted. It was a monstrous gamble, my life as the diversion for his grandmother's rescue. The selfish part of me screamed, the part that had spent a year alone in a kitchen, the part that had just learned he'd been trying to save me all along, quieted it. What's on the menu? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a menu written in his hand. 7 courses. Each one was a dish I had made for him over the year, each one attached to a memory, a secret shared in our silent dialogue. The abalone porridge, the *momb stew, the titiokboki from the day of the Incheon bust. The final course was listed simply as Sayonjang *, the taste of before. He was asking me to tell our story, to serve our private language as a public indictment. The meal would be a love letter and a declaration of war, served on Choi porcelain. I'll do it, I said. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His skin was warm. The contact was electric, a current that bypassed a year of silence. When you walk into that room, he said, his eyes deadly serious, they will try to stop you. Kang will be there. He will be ordered to remove you. You must look only at me, walk directly to me. Do you understand? I nodded, unable to speak. He stood, leaving the soju untouched. Prepare everything at the penthouse. They will send a van for you and the equipment at 6 p.m. the day after tomorrow. From that moment, you will be in their custody. He turned to go, then paused. Ilara, if you change your mind, use the card. I will understand. He melted into the night. I sat there until the Ajima started cleaning up, the first gray light of dawn staining the sky. I had 48 hours to plan the most important meal of my life and to prepare for my own execution or my own ascension. I went not to my apartment, but to an all-night sauna. I needed to think in the steam, away from any possible eyes. The next day in the penthouse kitchen, the air was different. Kang watched me with a new, unnerving intensity. He knew something had shifted. I worked with a calm I didn't feel, prepping components for the 7-course feast. I felt Minjun's presence in the house, a silent, supportive pressure. At one point, a small, wrapped package appeared on the ledge. Inside was a chef's coat, but not a standard white one. It was tailored, elegant, a deep charcoal gray. It was the uniform of a head chef, not a ghost. The note with it said, "Wear this, be seen." The day of the merger arrived. The kitchen was a symphony of controlled chaos. I worked with a focus so absolute the world fell away. At 5:30, the van arrived. Kang oversaw the loading of my meticulously packed crates. "The system is fully operational," he said into his phone, his eyes on me. I kept my face a blank screen. The Choi Museum was a fortress of cold marble and contemporary art. My temporary kitchen was a glass box in the center of a sprawling preparation area, a fishbowl. I could see Sujai Choi holding court, resplendent in a crimson dress, her laugh like shattering crystal. I saw Minjun, standing apart, a statue in a black tuxedo. Our eyes met across the crowded room. He gave the faintest nod. I cooked, I plated. The first 5 courses went out without incident. Servers whisked them away to the private dining hall. Each time a tray returned, the plates were clean. The food was disarming them, as I knew it would. It was too good, too soulful to be the product of a machine. Then it was time for the 6th course, the *momb* stew, the dish of my defiance. This was the moment. I plated it with deliberate care. I took off my white kitchen apron. I put on the charcoal gray chef's coat. I smoothed my hair. I picked up the tray holding the single, crucial bowl meant for Sujai Choi. I pushed open the door of my glass box and stepped into the flow of the party. For a few seconds, I was just another server. Then Kang saw me. His eyes widened in genuine shock, then narrowed into slits of fury. He started moving toward me, speaking rapidly into his wrist. I kept my eyes locked on Minjun, who was now watching me with an impassive face, though I saw the tension in his shoulders. I walked past a group of chatting executives. I walked past a priceless sculpture. I walked toward the grand, carved doors of the dining room. Kang intercepted me 5 feet from the entrance, his hand clamping on my arm. "What are you doing?" "Return to the kitchen immediately." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. "I am delivering course 6, as requested," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "The servers will do that. You are not permitted in there." "The system," I said, echoing his lie, "requires a manual override for this presentation, per Mr. Han's original programming." The lie, delivered with absolute calm, gave him pause. In that second of hesitation, I pulled my arm free and pushed through the double doors. The dining room fell silent. 20 of the most powerful criminals in Seoul stared at me. At the head of the table, Sujai Choi's perfect smile froze, then melted into a look of icy, bewildered rage. Minjun sat at the opposite end, his expression unreadable. I walked the long length of the table, the click of my shoes the only sound. I stopped beside Sujai's chair. I placed the bowl of *momb in front of her with a soft, definitive click. Then I straightened and turned to face the room. "Good evening," I said, my voice echoing in the silence. "My name is Ilara Vance. I am not a machine. For the past year, I have been Private Chef Minjun's ghost. And tonight, I have cooked for you not from a circuit board, but from a heart." I turned my gaze to Sujai, whose face was now a mask of pure hatred. "The stew is a Congolese dish called *momb*. It is the taste of my home, my family, my history. I served it to Minjun as a truth. I serve it to you as a question. How small does a person have to be for you to consider them disposable?" The room erupted, shouts, questions, chairs scraping. Kang burst through the doors, 2 security men behind him. They moved toward me, but Minjun stood. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "Touch her and you touch me." The room froze again. In that absolute silence, from the pocket of his tuxedo jacket, Minjun's phone vibrated once. He glanced at it. A single green light. A message received. The extraction was complete. His grandmother was safe. He looked at Sujai and his face transformed. The weary, pressured man was gone. In his place was the kingpin. "The merger," he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos, "is hereby terminated. You have my answer, Sujai. It is no. And you have my chef's answer as well. She is not a loose end. She is the knife that cuts the knot." He walked around the table, past his sputtering future father-in-law, past the stunned board members, and stopped before me. He didn't touch me, he simply offered his arm. "Chef Vance," he said, loud enough for all to hear, "your service tonight was impeccable. Shall we retire?" I took his arm, and together we walked out of the dining room, past a seething Kang, past the glittering, furious eyes of Sujai Choi, and into the unknown. The maze was burning, and for the first time we were walking through the fire, side by side. The silence in the car was absolute, a vacuum after the explosion. Minjun drove, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. We didn't go to the penthouse. We didn't go to a safe house. We drove for an hour, leaving the city lights behind, winding up into the dark mountains. He finally stopped at a secluded hanok, a traditional Korean house with a curved tile roof nestled in a pine forest. A single light glowed from the window. "She's here," he said, and the relief in his voice was a tangible thing. His grandmother, Halmione, was waiting at the low wooden table, a pot of barley tea steaming between her hands. She looked at Minjun, then at me, and her face broke into a smile that erased a century of worry. "The ghost has a face," she said in Korean, "and it is a good face. Come, sit. You must be tired from all that drama." The next 72 hours were a blur of strategy and stillness. Minjun was constantly on encrypted calls, managing the fallout. The Choi family declared war, of course, but the war was not what they expected. By publicly humiliating them and exposing their coercion, Minjun had turned the other families in their syndicate against them. The elders saw the attempt to force a merger through a grandmother's safety as a dangerous breach of their old, unspoken codes. Minjun was no longer a rebellious subordinate. He was a principled defender. The business war became a civil war within the organization, and Minjun, with his digital assets and now his moral high ground, began to win. I stayed at the hanok with Halmione. She taught me how to make kimchi the old way, her hands getting mine in the salty, pungent paste. She told stories about Minjun as a boy, stubborn and quiet, who loved her soybean paste stew more than anything. "He was always a lonely child," she said, patting my hand, "even before all this business. You fed the lonely man, now you must see the man without the loneliness." Minjun would return from his calls, the tension slowly leaving his shoulders each day. We began to talk, not through food but with words. He told me about the pressure of inheriting an empire he never wanted, the constant vigilance, the isolation that came with power. I told him about my restaurant in Paris, the dream that collapsed, the debt that felt like a chain. We talked about everything except the one question hanging between us: what now? On the fourth day, Kang arrived. He came alone, his hands empty. Minjun met him in the garden. From the window, I watched the conversation, their breath-making clouds in the cold air. Kang bowed deeply, a bow of submission and apology. He had been compromised years ago, his own family threatened by the Chois. He had fed them information, but he claimed he had never directly acted against Minjun's life. Minjun listened, then spoke quietly for a long time. Kang bowed again, even deeper. He turned and left, walking back down the mountain road. He was not punished. He was simply dismissed. Exiled from the kingdom he had betrayed, it was a mercy far colder than any violence. That evening, Minjun found me in the kitchen, helping Halmione clean the dinner dishes. "It's done," he said. "The Choi family's influence is broken. Sujai and her father are fleeing the country. The organization is restructuring." He leaned against the doorway. "You are safe, Ilara, truly safe. The account with the money is still yours. You can go anywhere, open a restaurant, disappear, you are free." Halmione clicked her tongue, drying a bowl with fierce concentration. "Such a foolish boy. After all that, you offer her an exit." I looked at him, at the man who had shared his deepest memory with a ghost, who had risked his empire to save an old woman and a chef, the man whose food language I could speak fluently. "What are you offering instead?" I asked, my heart a drum in my chest. He pushed off from the doorway and walked to me. He didn't touch me. He just stood there, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "A partnership," he said, "not in the business. That world is receding. I am liquidating most of it, but I am keeping a few properties. One is a small, impossible-to-find hotel on Jeju Island. It has a kitchen, a magnificent one. It needs a chef, not a ghost, a creator, a name." "And what would you do?" I whispered. "I would learn," he said simply, "to be something other than what I was. Perhaps I would manage the books. or tend the garden, or simply taste the food and know the person who made it is happy. Halmione sighed a happy sigh and shuffled out of the kitchen, leaving us alone. "Is that a proposal?" I asked, a smile touching my lips. "It is an invitation," he said, "to write a new language together, starting with breakfast tomorrow." I reached out then and finally did what I had wanted to do for a year. I placed my hand against his cheek. He leaned into the touch, his eyes closing for a brief second. "I have one condition," I said. "Anything. You have to be in the kitchen with me. No more service ledgers, no more eating alone." He opened his eyes, and the warmth in them was a country I wanted to live in forever. "That," he said, "is the easiest condition I have ever agreed to." We opened the hotel 6 months later. It's called *Moyo*. It means heart in Congolese Lingala. Our signature dish is a 7-course tasting menu that tells our story. The abalone porridge, the *mombe*, the titiokboki. We end always with a simple bowl of *sayonjang*, the taste of before that leads to after. Halmione lives in the brightest suite, and she holds court in the dining room every night, telling customers outrageous stories about her grandson, the gangster, and the chef who tamed him with a stew. And the final surprising detail, the one that changed everything I thought I knew, it came from Halmione one quiet afternoon. We were shelling peas on the porch. She said, "You know he found you on purpose." I paused. She smiled. "After his father died, Minjun was lost. He went to Paris for a business deal, but he wandered into a tiny restaurant for lunch, a place called *L'Étoile de Kinshasa*. It was yours. You had just opened. He said the meal was the first thing that felt real in years. He took a card. He followed your career. When your restaurant failed, his man contacted your agent. The offer was not random. It was a rescue mission from the very beginning. He just didn't know he would be the one needing rescue in the end. So the man who fell in love with my cooking had seen my face long before that day in the museum. He had been my silent patron before he became my silent employer. The invisible thread between us had been there all along, pulling us toward this moment, this kitchen, this life where nothing and no one is ever invisible again. So the story of the invisible chef and the lonely kingpin was never a story about strangers at all. It was a story about two people who were already speaking the same language long before they shared a kitchen. A language of memory, of care, of a deep and quiet recognition that sometimes arrives long before a first look or a first touch. We all have our versions of invisibility, moments where we feel like ghosts in our own lives, serving something of ourselves into the void, hoping it will be tasted, hoping it will mean something to someone somewhere. Ilara's year in the silent penthouse is just an extreme metaphor for a universal human condition. We cook our meals, we do our work, we offer our art, and we wonder, is anyone truly seeing? Is anyone truly tasting the essence of what we've made? Minjun's rule, "never let him see you," wasn't just a security protocol. It was the wall he built around his own wounded heart. And Ilara's food, her mother's okra soup, her Congolese stew, was the gentle, persistent tide that eroded that wall grain by grain until it finally crumbled. Their story tells us that the most powerful connections aren't always built in the glaring light of attention. Sometimes they are built in the sacred, quiet dark of shared understanding. A note about a beetle, a perfectly tied double knot, a bowl of stew that tastes like home. The face reveal in that museum wasn't the beginning of their story. It was the moment their private, silent world finally collided with the noisy, demanding one. It was the moment they chose each other, publicly and defiantly, over every other power and principle in their lives. He chose the chef over his empire. She chose the man over her safety. And in that mutual, terrifying choice, they both became truly visible, perhaps for the first time. The Hotel *Moyo* on Jeju Island is their testament. It is a place built not on secrecy, but on openness, not on power, but on partnership. Every dish on their menu is a love letter to the idea that no one should have to eat alone, that no one should have to cook in silence, and that the most dangerous ingredient in any recipe is not a spice, but a lie. So what is the lingering question their story leaves us with? Perhaps it is this: in your own life, where are you the invisible chef? And where are you the lonely diner? What silent language are you speaking? And who, against all odds, might already be listening? What wall might be waiting for the right taste to make it fall? Thank you for sharing this hour with us, for walking through this story of flavor and fear, silence and revelation. If this tale of the invisible woman and the man who finally saw her resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own hidden connections or quiet acts of courage, we would be honored to hear about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what ingredient you would bring to their table. If you know someone who needs a reminder that they are seen, or a nudge to look more closely at the quiet person in their own life, please share this story with them. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our family of storytellers. We have so many more worlds to explore together. Until next time, remember, the most profound meals are often served long before anyone ever sits down at the table. Keep cooking, keep tasting, and never, ever underestimate the power of a ghost who decides to be seen.